Let's fill out a 2024 US Senate map based on the latest polls taken in the most competitive races. Democrats must defend 23 of the 34 Senate seats up for election this November, including 8 of the 10 most competitive races and 3 seats in states that Trump won in both 2016 and 2020. Those are Montana, Ohio, and West Virginia. Needless to say, the 2024 US Senate map is extremely favorable for Republicans. They have an 82% chance of securing a majority per Decision Desk HQ's latest forecast. Now let's first fill out all of these safe seats for both parties, where their chances of winning, according to this forecast, is greater than 95%. For Democrats, that includes Washington, California, and Hawaii, New Mexico, Minnesota, and then up in the Northeast, New York, Vermont, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New Jersey, Delaware, and Maryland. For me, the only question mark here is Maryland. Former Republican Governor Larry Hogan is running for Senate. He was incredibly popular throughout his 2 terms in office and is polled competitively against Angela Alsobrooks, the Democratic nominee here. Though, of course, Hogan faces an extreme uphill fundamental battle in this deep blue state that Biden won by 33 points in 2020. Otherwise, Democrats should have no concerns whatsoever in holding the rest of these solid blue states. For Republicans, their safe seats are in North Dakota, Wyoming, and Utah, Nebraska's regular and special election, Missouri, Tennessee, Mississippi, West Virginia, and Indiana. These are all solid Trump states at the presidential level and have no unique circumstances that would render them competitive here. Notably, West Virginia is going to be a flip as Democratic incumbent Senator Joe Manchin is retiring, setting up the sitting GOP Governor Jim Justice to win in a landslide this November in this Trump plus 40 states. Alrighty, that leaves us with just 11 states not yet rated. Republicans already hold a 48 to 41 seat advantage as a product of the massive fundamental advantage that they enjoy on this map. If Trump takes back the White House, Republicans would only need to win 2 of the 11 remaining states to secure a majority with the VP tiebreak. But even if Trump does lose to Kamala Harris, winning 3 of 11 of these seats is still very favorable. Let's go ahead and start in Montana, a very closely watched contest between incumbent Democratic Senator Jon Tester and his Republican opponent Tim Sheehy, a Navy SEAL turned aerospace CEO. Now, Tester has managed to win re-election twice in deep red Montana thanks to his increasingly atypical popularity across the political spectrum. He is facing tougher re-election odds, though, this November than he ever has before, because split-ticket voting is at an all-time low, meaning that fewer voters than ever are casting their ballots for presidential and Senate candidates of different parties. Donald Trump carried Montana by 20 percentage points in 2016 and then by 16 in 2020, and he should win it again by at least 15% this November. Now, the last time that Tester ran in a general election, he did outperform Barack Obama by 18% in Montana. But again, that is going to be extremely difficult to replicate in a much more polarized political environment here in 2024. The latest survey released by American Pulse Research has Sheehy leading Tester by 6 points, 50.8% to 44.7%, among 538 registered voters surveyed between August 10th and August 12th. Now, Sheehy is a relatively strong Republican recruit, and by that I mean that he doesn't come with the same electability concerns as many of the Republican Party's unsuccessful nominees in battlegrounds back in 2022. And that's going to make things even more difficult for Tester as we place Montana down as leaning Republican. Moving right on down to Nevada, we have another competitive race here between incumbent Democratic Senator Jackie Rosen and her Republican opponent, U.S. Army veteran Sam Brown. Rosen was first elected in the blue wave of 2018 by 5% over then-incumbent Republican Senator Dean Heller. Nevada may have the nickname the Silver State, but electorally speaking, it is as purple as it gets, as both of the last 2 presidential contests went to Democrats by less than 2.5 percentage points, while Republicans flipped the governor's office in 2022. The latest survey released by Redfield and Wilton Strategies has Rosen leading Brown by 4 points among 536 registered voters surveyed between August 12th and 15th. It seems like each poll released here in Nevada seems to be showing a tightening race now that Brown is officially the Republican nominee and more voters have become familiar with him. He is again a much less problematic nominee, so to speak, for Republicans than 2022 candidates like Herschel Walker over in Georgia and Dr. Oz in Pennsylvania, who both massively underperformed the fundamentals. Now, here in 2024, most forecasters do generally agree that Rosen holds an edge as the incumbent here in a state that is likely to be decided by just a point or two either way at the top of the ballot. And for now, Nevada's Senate race is marked as leaning Democrat, with that 4-point lead for Rosen. Let's go down to Arizona now, another key battleground in the presidential race. The Senate contest is also expected to be highly competitive. Incumbent Senator Kyrsten Sinema opted against running for re-election as an independent. She does continue to caucus with Democrats in the Senate, but the party nominated Congressman Ruben Gallego as their candidate to face Republican Kari Lake, who did come less than half a point from winning the 2022 Arizona governor race. Now, for a long time, Arizona was a Republican stronghold, but Democrats have now won the last 5 major statewide races here for president, Senate, and governor. The latest poll surveying the race between Gallego and Lake comes from Siena College with the New York Times, a highly reputable pollster, and this survey shows Gallego leading Lake by 9 percentage points here, 51% to 42%, among 677 likely voters surveyed between August 8th and 15th. Now, comparatively, in the presidential version of this same survey, Harris leads Trump by only 4 points, so Gallego is outrunning Harris by 5 points. At this point, we've become used to seeing this kind of Senate overperformance for Democrats, as before Joe Biden dropped out of the race, we would often see polls showing him trailing Trump in the presidential contest, yet the Democratic Senate candidate out in front. That was both a testament to Biden's unpopularity, but also the relative strength of the Democratic Party's nominees this cycle. Tester, Rosen, and Gallego are all above average nominees in terms of their previous electoral strength. And here in Arizona, with Gallego up 9 points in the latest survey, it goes down as likely Democrat. Shifting over to Texas, incumbent Senator Ted Cruz is, for better or for worse, one of the most well-known senators in the country. You either love him or you hate him. He's running for a third term after coming surprisingly close to losing in 2018 against popular Democrat Beto O'Rourke. Cruz won by just 2.6%, the closest Senate contest here in Texas since 1978. He should have less of a problem this November against Democratic nominee Congressman Colin Allred, thanks in part to the fact that Donald Trump should carry Texas by at least 6 points against Kamala Harris in the presidential race. Now, YouGov and the University of Texas have Cruz up only 2 points over Allred among almost 1,400 likely voters surveyed between August 5th and 16th. This is a narrower margin than in most surveys we've seen here this cycle, though as we take a look at the polling average via Decision Desk HQ and The Hill, you do see the overall margin narrowing over the last couple weeks, down to just 3.4% based on 19 polls here. Back on our map, we're going to place Texas down as tilting towards the GOP with a 2-point latest polling advantage for Ted Cruz. Next is the Sunshine State, Florida. Republican incumbent Rick Scott is seeking a second term in the Senate after first being elected by just 0.1 of a percentage point in 2018. Now, this 2024 race is going to be much less competitive, as Florida has shifted hard to the right over the last couple election cycles, and the latest poll by McLaughlin and Associates, surveyed between August 6th and 8th, shows Scott leading his likely Democratic opponent, former Congresswoman Debbie Mucarsel-Powell, by 10 points among 800 likely voters. That, of course, means that Florida is a safe Republican state here on our map. Remember, back in 2022, Republican incumbent Governor Ron DeSantis won re-election by 19 points, and Republican Senator Marco Rubio also by 16 points. Florida really has shifted hard to the right. And now back on our map, take a look at the updated seat count now. Republicans are projected to win 51 seats, a clear majority that would hold up even if Trump loses the presidential race. Let's head over to Virginia now, though. Incumbent Democrat Tim Kaine leads his Republican opponent, Hung Cao, here in the Commonwealth by 11 points, according to this Roanoke College survey from August 12th through 16th. You may remember Kaine as Hillary Clinton's running mate in 2016, or not, I wouldn't really blame you. He was reelected to a second term in 2018 by 16 points. Virginia is therefore safe Democrat here. Up in Ohio, incumbent Democrat Sherrod Brown is seeking a fourth term against Republican car dealer Bernie Moreno. Brown, like Tester over in Montana, has managed to remain in office in this now strongly Republican-leaning state due to his broad appeal across the political spectrum. Back in 2018, he won re-election by 8 points, even as the competitive governor election went to the Republican Mike DeWine by 4 points. That being said, 2018 was a Democratic wave year without the presidential race on the ballot. And so again, just like over in Montana, 2024 is a whole new test for these popular Democratic incumbents. Donald Trump carried Ohio by 8 points in both 2016 and 2020, and again, it's becoming rarer and rarer to see candidates of different parties win a state's presidential and Senate races. In fact, it's only happened once since 2012, and in the 2020 general election cycle, just 3 of 33 Senate candidates managed to outperform their party's presidential candidate by more than 10 points. There's a good chance that Brown will have to do that this fall, though he does get the benefit of facing Moreno, who was widely viewed as Republicans' least electable candidate in the primary. And the latest poll via ActiVote actually has Brown up 5 points, with 52.5% to Moreno's 47.5%. 400 likely voters were included in this survey in Ohio, and the margin here, Brown plus 5, means that we'll place it down in the lean Democrat category. This would be a crucial hold for Democrats if it holds up, though again, it may not matter if Tester cannot manage to claw his way back into the race over in Montana. Moving on, though, up and over in Wisconsin, Democrat Tammy Baldwin is running for a third term after she was reelected by 11 points in 2018. Now, Wisconsin is, of course, a highly competitive state at the presidential level, having been decided by less than a point in both 2016 and 2020. And here in 2024, Democrats have consistently performed better in the polls here in Wisconsin than in most other key swing states. Currently, Kamala Harris leads Donald Trump by 3.3% right now in the presidential average, though it's important to note that we have seen some pretty egregious polling errors underestimating Trump in Wisconsin in years past. Back at the Senate level, though, Baldwin will be expected to run a couple of points ahead of the top of the ticket as a reasonably popular incumbent. And the latest survey by BSG/GS Strategy Group, so a Republican and a Democratic polling firm, does provide evidence for that theory. Baldwin leads likely Republican nominee Eric Hovde by 7 points here, with 48% to 41% among 404 likely voters surveyed between July 26th and August 2nd. But when looking at the presidential version of this poll, Harris leads Trump by only 3 points. I do think it's reasonable to make the assertion that even if Harris does lose Wisconsin by a point or two, Baldwin should still squeak by, so she definitely has a strong safety net. It's going to be likely Democrat here, coming off that 7-point lead in the latest poll. Just to the east now is Michigan, where incumbent Democrat Debbie Stabenow is retiring, leaving Democrats more vulnerable than they would have been had Stabenow run for a 5th term in office. This will be the first open race for this seat since 1994, which does happen to also be the only time since 1972 that Republicans won a Senate race in Michigan. Along with Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, it is part of the core Rust Belt trio that could decide the 2024 presidential race. Decision Desk HQ's latest polling average has Harris leading Trump by less than 2 points, 1.9% based on 15 polls. Of course, as is the case everywhere else, the Senate race question becomes how Democratic nominee Alyssa Slotkin will perform compared to Harris against Republican nominee Mike Rogers, a former congressman himself. Both candidates are strong recruits for their respective parties, and the most recent Senate poll conducted by Siena College and the New York Times, again here between August 5th and 9th, has Slotkin leading by just 1 point among 619 registered voters. Slotkin is at 42%, Rogers 41%. Again, comparing this to the presidential question with the same sample, Trump leads Harris by 3 points. So another Democratic Senate overperformance there. We're going to place Michigan's Senate race as tilting Democrat. Now, penultimately, in Pennsylvania, incumbent Democratic Senator Bob Casey Jr. is an electoral powerhouse here in the Keystone State, and that might be understating it. He has won 6 straight statewide elections by at least 9 points in one of the most competitive states of the 21st century. Of course, needless to say, Pennsylvania is an extremely competitive race at the presidential level, though Democrats have to feel pretty confident in Casey's ability to hold the Senate seat, given his strength as a candidate alone. The latest survey here by Emerson College, another flagship pollster, is Casey leading by 5 points among 1,000 likely voters surveyed between August 13th and 14th. Casey 48.1%, David McCormick 43.5%. You may remember McCormick from the 2022 cycle when he came just a couple of hundred voters shy of winning the Republican nomination against Dr. Oz, who of course went on to lose to Democrat John Fetterman by 5 points in a massive underperformance relative to polling expectations. So you could say that this is McCormick's chance to prove himself here as the more electable candidate. Nevertheless, Pennsylvania will lean Democrat based on that 5-point latest poll lead. Finally, up in Maine, incumbent independent Senator Angus King is seeking re-election to a 3rd term. He does caucus with Democrats in the Senate, like Bernie Sanders in Vermont and Kyrsten Sinema over in Arizona, though he does technically run as an independent. The latest poll from the University of New Hampshire has him leading his Republican opponent, Demi Kouzounis, by 10 points among 936 likely voters surveyed between August 15th and 19th. King does consistently rank among the most popular senators in the country and should ultimately have little problem retaining the seat as a quasi-Democrat hold. So that does it for this edition of the 2024 U.S. Senate map based on the most recent surveys taken in competitive battlegrounds. Republicans are projected to flip the majority with 51 seats over Democrats' 49. Now, in case you're curious, though, as to see how these latest polls compare to current betting odds, BetOnline has the latest numbers for each of the competitive races. You can see here, starting in Michigan, Alyssa Slotkin is favored over Mike Rogers at -400, which of course makes sense when you consider that she does lead Rogers by more than 6 points in the overall average via DDHQ. And then moving down to Ohio and Pennsylvania here, no surprise, Bob Casey is favored at -700, whereas Brown, despite leading in pretty much every poll, is only favored at -150. Now, personally, I have been a very strong proponent that the fundamentals are just working a little too hard against Brown for him to win this race. And it seemed like for a while, the odds agreed. But it is interesting as we get closer to Election Day and more polls show Brown leading, the betting public does seem to be shifting back to the incumbent. You, of course, can check out the rest of these latest odds via the link in the description or pinned comment section down below. I often find they provide an interesting fundamental counter, so to speak, to polling data alone. Feel free to let me know your thoughts on this map, the state of play in 2024, or anything else you want to leave as a comment in the comment section below. Also, make sure to let me know down there what other 2024 related videos you would like to see in the future. Shout out to my channel members on screen here. Thank you so much for your support. If you would like to become a member, go ahead and click the join button below this video to receive exclusive perks. Make sure to subscribe to my channel as well, and please leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it. You can check out more content from my channel here, and as always, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. EP out.